The Buffalo Bills have made a lot of moves as they are still looking to try and get to the Super Bowl and hoist up the Lombardi Trophy for the first time. But how will their free agency moves affect their draft decisions? My name's Tyler, here with my brother Ryan, and we've got another 3-round mock draft for you coming up here in a second. Before we do that, though, do all the YouTube stuff, subscribe, like, tackle the bell, comment, whatever. And Ryan, let's pull up the draft here. So we did a full 3-round mock draft, all 102 picks, and the Bills have made a couple of moves already, signing Joey Bosa. They get Larry Ogunjobi, who I think is suspended for the first couple of games now. I need to go back and double check. They moved on from Matt Collins and Amari Cooper, and then they ended up getting Josh Palmer coming out of Los Angeles, and I like that move as well. So sitting here, if there's one thing I think that they still really need to focus on, is just improving that secondary room as a whole. I think linebacker potentially also could be a route they end up going, but it just still you just go look at the performances from last year, and they traded Kyer Elam, which is probably for the best for all parties involved. But I think outside of Christian Benford, and outside Christian Benford, there could be some room for improvement overall. I think Trey Amos is going to be a guy super aggressive, but from what you see on film, had a good career at Ole Miss, and I think he could fit in well into that Sean McDermott defense, especially too with the front four that they do have and how aggressive that they can get after offensive lines and can really drop back 7 guys on a pretty consistent basis overall. Correct me if I'm
Mhm.
wrong in the comments. I feel like that's correct. But Ryan, what do you like about Trey Amos here and what he brings to this Bills defense?
He brings a level of physicality and just length and size that I think he wanted out of Kyer Elam. But I think he does it in a more polished package. I and like not to I just was not a huge fan of Kyer Elam. Not to like toot my
I
own
don't think
horn. I
anybody
just
was.
well, no.
Neither, neither were the
Coming out of
Bills as they
Florida.
traded him. Oh,
No,
coming
no,
out of
no.
college. Okay.
Yeah, coming out of college. And I never really saw it with him. He was a great athlete in terms of like maybe combine testing. But I feel like Trey Amos actually has the tape to back up a lot of his combine numbers and whatnot. And so I feel like I could see Trey Amos a lot more. And with that, how physical and penetrating that front can be, especially now with the addition of Joey Bosa. Getting a long press corner, I feel like is going to be a good thing for this defense and give them a good look, especially too as the season goes on and you're playing in cold weather games. Those games are going to be get more and more physical with the later the season goes. So I think Amos fits in really well with that system. If they want to go with more of a speed guy, Maxwell Hairston was on the board at this point. I feel like Amos might fit the personality of that defense maybe a little bit more. They could go with one of the top linebackers in the draft with Demetrius Knight, who's just an absolute freak athlete, and what he is one of the older guys in this draft class. But you just look at what he does on the football field, and it's really impressive. And Tyreek Williams, the big defensive tackle from Ohio State, be a much more run stuffing defensive tackle, and you could put him next to Ed Oliver, who can really get up the field. So
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of good options here for the Bills at 30.
Well, and this goes back to my point earlier on, though. It's so like according to Pro Football Reference, Bills blitzed only 19.1% of the time, so which puts them like fifth or sixth least amount, tied with the Philadelphia Eagles. But then if you go look at their hurry percentages overall, they're top 10 with about 9% hurries per play. Pressure rating was 23.6, which is putting them about 10th overall. So even with mainly blitzing, sending 4 guys to the quarterback, they're able to drop back 7. I think you go get an aggressive guy like Trey Amos in there, and then with the hurry percentages that they do get, you talk about adding Joey Bosa. I think he kind of can have that opportunistic guy because he's going to have a lot of guys over top of him as well to help in coverage. And so
Yeah.
I think it'd be an interesting fit. Curious to see what Bills fans think of that. But they have 2 picks in the second round here. They have the 56th pick overall. And this is where we ended up going with Omar Norman-Lott, defensive tackle out of Tennessee. You can almost, it's weird to say, almost a pass rush specialist. It felt like coming out of Tennessee. If you go look at the percentage of snaps that he did, I'm saying that I'm being very facetious when I say that, though. I think 2/3 of the snaps were pass plays, but also
Yeah.
too, you're playing in the SEC as well, so there's a lot of passing that goes on around
Also,
there.
Tennessee led college football, I believe, in like defensive line substitutions. Like they had a heavy rotation
Yeah.
of defensive linemen, and so he could be much more of a like a true 3 down defensive tackle. It's just one of those projections, and probably also why he falls to 56, just because his pass rushing statistics are really good for being an interior defensive lineman. But I think you could go there. He is a little bit bigger. I believe he's 6'3", 315. So he could, I think, complement Ed Oliver well and be on the field in early downs. It's just not nearly as prevalent on tape. But the Bills, they like to rotate those linemen in and out as well. They did sign Larry Ogunjobi, Dwayne Carter's there. They have Daquan Jones, Ed Oliver. So there's a lot of guys that are in that room already. But with that being said, I still feel like Omar Norman-Lott could carve out a space and really benefit this team go forward. It kind of did feel like best player available at this point, and the Bills are one of those teams where I feel like they have enough. They have a really solid team built up already, and so they kind of will be drafting, I think, best player available.
Yeah, yeah, and I think too, like with this, I do think linebacker could end up being a position that they end up going with, but at this time, there's really only a couple of top end, like day one, day two linebackers that are coming to my mind. But I think and they have a bunch of picks. I think there could be linebackers could be a spot that they end up going with early in the fourth round here. This is also a potential trade back spot as they have they're picking again here in 6 picks, where they ended up actually taking Charles Grant out of Charles and Mary as well and address that offensive line as a whole.
William and Mary.
William and Mary. Sorry. Yeah. Charles and Mary. You get how I got there. So, but out of William and Mary, but he's been a guy that's been rising a lot too. I think he would be a good addition overall to that interior. They have addressed it a lot. They have one of the better offensive lines in the league. Once again, just kind of similar. Felt like this is a move that they would make to beef up the trenches. Very possible spot to trade back here as well. But once again, to your point, we were kind of doing this draft, and it's like when with these top talented overall teams, they maybe could double dip at corner again as Benjamin Morrison and Azariah Thomas were available. And I think that might be like their overall weakness is just that secondary. Second, it could be a little bit of a liability. Is
Yeah.
all we're trying to say. And but that being said, though, I feel like Joe Brady really loves the running the ball, so you want to have good depth, good players there.
Yeah. No, and that's Charles Grant. I think you look at what he brings to the table. So he's a great athlete. He's going to have to up his play strength coming from FCS to the NFL. So there's going to be a little bit of development there. But then also too, he was a left tackle. He has a lot more size and length than I think we all originally thought. He's 6'5", had 34.5 inch
Mm-hmm.
arms. So he could potentially stick outside at and be a swing tackle for them, or he could kick inside and be a guard. We'll just kind of have to wait and see what he ends up being. But you got to love that athletic profile for a guy here, and I just think it's good business to invest in that offensive line for them, especially with how they like to run the football. So, I mean, all in all, with the Bills, you go and you get a impact corner there in the first round. You use your 2 second-round picks to invest in the trenches, and I like that draft there for the Bills. I don't think they need a whole lot. They have Josh Allen, they have the star power that they need, and I feel like from there, this is a draft that's really going to help them go and really win a Super Bowl.
Yeah, because they're right there. I mean, the Bills have put
Yeah,
themselves in position to be successful. Uh, I feel like over the past 5 years, it feels like it, and so they even have guys like in weight, like just for example, like Cedric Von Pron, former center out of Georgia, like he's back up right now to Connor McGovern. Like so, like they have guys even in waiting for when it's their time to come. I think there's one thing, and it's kind of unfair to say because like sometimes like you draft receivers and then you can't tell if they're going to turn into a Justin Jefferson or CD Lamb, or they could be N'Keal Harry. You know exactly what I'm talking about here. But like that could be something that like the Bills are missing is like they had Stephon Diggs, and I get why they traded him overall. But it's like if they could go back and get that number one pure guy that you can go and get, like they extended Khalil Shakur, which I totally get. I think he's very solid. He's a very solid receiver, but I think he is kind of that 1B type guy that would complement a right, and Stephon did or a 1A receiver really well. As I
yeah,
said, it's like you. I don't want to say you luck into those guys. I guess in the Vikings case,
No, you
since
do.
you guys drafted N'Keal Harry, you guys could have drafted Justin Jefferson, but that's a separate conversation.
No,
But
it wasn't just Jefferson. It was AJ Brown, Debo Samuel, or DK Metcalf. It was literally any other
who was
pick.
the next? I'm trying to think of who. Oh, maybe I'm thinking of the Eagles that did that. But you know what I'm
They
talking about.
drafted Jalen Rager. Yeah,
That's
yeah,
what it was.
that's an all
That's it.
time bad one.
Sorry,
That's
sorry,
an all
sorry,
time
sorry.
bad one.
That's what I'm thinking of. But still, the point's the same though, and
Yeah,
uh, you never know how those guys are going to pan out. But at the same time, though, too, it's nice to have them. So like, that's the one
yeah.
thing. But I don't know how the Bills control that unless they just scout really well.
Yeah, yeah, and that is like they have kind of adopted that. We joke about it, but it's like the wide receiver by committee, where it's like
Yeah,
they now have you look Curtis Samuel, Khalil Shakir, Josh Palmer, and Keon Coleman, and then you throw Dawson Knox, Dalton Kincaid into that room, and like that's a pretty good pass catching room. James Cook, Ty Johnson, Ray Davis. It was a really good 3-headed monster in the backfield there. So like their skill position player room is really well rounded. There's just not like like you said, a Stephon Diggs or like a
there's
true
just not
coverage dictator.
that guy that like
Yeah,
Stephon Diggs and Josh Allen could take over the game. And
yeah,
now it's just Josh Allen is so great that he can take over the game. But you don't want to put it all on his shoulders. Like you don't want like
yeah,
to run the ball, like to force him to run the ball in those situations. You want him to have that guy that could be like, nope, this guy's going to create separation, like no matter what. But
yeah,
as I said, and it's unfair to say because like I get why you trade Stephon Diggs, and
yeah.
Stephon Diggs has clearly declined from what he once was. Uh, but like those guys, like you can't just go pick those guys up.
No,
You know,
there's probably like 15 of those guys in the league at the moment, and so that leaves 17 other teams that are just without a true like
exactly,
dominant wide receiver. So yeah, I think it's a fair criticism, but I feel like the Bills are definitely in a good spot to make up for the lack of like a true coverage dictating wide receiver, just
yeah.
with the overall depth of that. Like they have 4 solid wide receivers now with and like 2 other really solid tight ends. So let's go ahead. Let's wrap up this video here. If you guys have not already, please go ahead and like and subscribe. That is the best way to help out the channel. While you're down there, leave a comment on what you thought of this Bills 3-round mock draft. Did you love it? Did you hate it? What would you have done differently? Other than that, we'll see you guys next time.